You're listening to Smart Moves with your hosts, Ann Riley Caldwell and Matt Wilson.
Hey, welcome to the Smart Moves podcast, where we help you make smart and strategic decisions when it comes to real estate, mortgages, and living in Middle Tennessee. This week, we're talking about the hot topic, the Iran war. Everybody hears Iran war and just automatically assumes gas prices are going to go up, interest rates are going to go up, mortgage interest rates are going to go up, and sometimes that does happen, but that's not always the whole story. So today we're going to break down the Iran war and the effect on real estate and mortgages, what's real, what's noise, and what actually matters if you're trying to buy, sell, move to Middle Tennessee. I'm Ann Riley Caldwell, not your ordinary agent. I'm here with loan lender, branch manager extraordinaire Matt Wilson with New American Funding. Matt's going to handle most of this because this is his area of expertise. Also, as a military veteran, he knows a few things about war and all that kind of fun stuff. So anyway, today we're going to sort of break down the Iran war and how it may be impacting. You've probably heard the Strait of Hormuz has been blocked. Oil shipments, the Middle Eastern countries that obviously give us a lot of oil supply around the whole world have, I guess, have not been producing quite as much oil. They also have some issues with shipping it out. In the U.S., we're not quite as dependent upon all of that because we have a lot of oil production ourselves. So we actually don't necessarily use a lot of their oil. But on the flip side, it obviously impacts the world and the economy that we live in, which ultimately does impact us anyway. So anyway, I'm going to let Matt explain a little bit about whenever we see military conflicts like this, what are we looking at as far as what's likely to impact mortgage rates?
Yeah, so generally speaking, negative things like a war would actually be a positive for interest rates. If we crank it back to COVID, COVID was a terrible thing and it was pretty good for interest rates. Um, that was about the only thing that was good during that time. The thing that's kind of been the black sparrow on this situation though, or black swan, whatever, the thing that came out of left field on this situation is the fact that we're dealing with an oil-bearing country that controls one of the main choke points for oil trade around the entire world. So yeah, we obviously don't obtain oil from Iran in the United States for obvious reasons. However, there are lots of parts of the world that do, and Iran is effectively, since the war began, blocking the Strait of Hormuz and keeping the oil flow choked off right there. And that is going to cause inflation, is the concerns of most investors. Over the last couple of years, the whole reason interest rates went up through the moon was because inflation went up to the moon too. If you're an investor and inflation's at 6%, you want to make sure that your investments are making more than that, or you're dollar for dollar losing monetary power every time that you compound. With that being said, oil touches every piece of everything that we do. The bottled water that you're drinking, the bottle itself is made out of petroleum. It had to get put on a truck. It had to get pumped out of the ground probably. It had to get filtered. All of that stuff had oil. You got it and put it in your car to bring it home. You had oil. So all of that just kind of compounds and just runs through the rest of the economy whenever oil is jacked up. The crazy thing is like this all happened on the heels of some of the best rates that we've had consistently over the last 3 years. And then as fast as this started, rates have kind of dropped off that. Now, they're still pretty good. They're just not as good as they were 2 weeks ago. So I think that that's another thing that everybody needs to do is just keep this all in relative proportion to each other.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is because everybody listens to the headlines and makes a lot of assumptions. A lot of news people, not surprisingly anymore, like to scare everybody or make things sound worse than what they are at times. And that's why it's important to talk to somebody like Matt when you're in the process of wanting to get pre-approved and think about moving forward. Because there's, as we mentioned at the top, there's truth behind it. And then there's also a lot of misconceptions behind it. And, obviously this is a sort of new, different impact on things. But, the typical things that we've talked about in other podcasts obviously are still going on. One of those being jobs reports. So what's been happening with that lately, and how do you think that's affecting things?
Yeah, so the jobs report that came out most recently was pretty horrific, actually. And that's actually something that should be a good thing for mortgage rates. If that happened in isolation, I think that we would have seen mortgage rates, closer to 4-year best levels. But the war, basically, whenever the interest rates or whenever the jobs reports came out, because of the war, it kind of washed each other out that day in the market. What we saw there was anticipation with the BLS that there was going to be 50 something thousand jobs created, and instead the economy lost 92,000 jobs last month. So, with that being the situation, that's not good. But right now we're in this uncomfortable spot where the jobs reports are looking ugly. Usually, interest rates lowering helps those in the future, but interest rates aren't lowering because we're worried about inflation because of a war. There's also the secondary piece of inflation, and that is inflation itself is a form of taxation. The only reason inflation exists is because the government overspends money and they print more of it to spend more money, which makes it worth less. Well, the most common reason they're going to spend more money than they have is to launch missiles and things like that. So that right there is another secondary concern that I think is contributing to the inflationary concerns because, we it, it's not unlimited resources to just lob bombs and missiles somewhere different. You've got to make more and pay for more over and over again. Every time one goes kaboom, you got to pay for it and build another one. So anyway, that's kind of that was probably the best day we've had in the market in recent days was the jobs report. And what that basically meant was it just didn't go down as much. Things didn't get as bad that day as they have pretty much every other day.
Yeah, and there's some other things. Amazon had a big outage, which took down some websites and closed some stores, and that doesn't necessarily directly impact probably the bottom line all that much, but it's something I would say to keep an eye on because obviously, depending on what gets taken out in the war, it could create at least short-term economic issues that you just can't foresee. Because people may not be able to. Obviously, there's shipping issues involved, some stuff getting stuck that can't make it to the ports. There's just a lot of economic sort of uncertainty, I think, around just different issues that are going on, some of which can be anticipated and some of which cannot. As always, a lot of it, I think, has to do definitely with buyer psychology, seller psychology. What are people thinking and how are they allowing that to impact them as much as the real world aspects of it? Because again, we didn't see interest rates skyrocket to 10%. Nothing overly huge has developed other than, you can remind us from our past podcast. Over the course of the last 6 months, we've sort of seen interest rates sort of stay within, I think, a fairly, I would say, narrow band, just kind of going up and down and up and down and up and down. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's pretty accurate. Over the last 6 months or so, nothing too dramatic has happened until now. That being said, even then, if you look at everything in isolation, it looks terrible. But if you look at the patterns over time, you realize that compared to a year ago and 2 years ago, when people were still buying houses just fine, um, we're still in pretty good shape. We were real ugly back then, and now it's not as good as it could have been 2 weeks ago. But this also, to me, goes to prove why you can't time the market. Because if you think, oh, interest rates are getting better, I want to just wait it out until they continue. It's not a straight line. It's going to be up and down and wavy, and things are going to happen that you don't anticipate. The market doesn't anticipate. It's going to make it worse. If they went down forever, you'd wind up at zero eventually, right? And that's not economically possible.
Right. Well, and one of the things that we tell people all the time when we're sort of giving advice is if you think you want to do something, just go ahead and get pre approved. See where you are, see what that looks like, see what that equates to from a purchase price standpoint. On the real estate side, I help you figure out if that's going to get you what you need versus what you want. Not always the same thing. What areas are you going to be able to buy in here in Middle Tennessee? Is that going to work for you? Because it's like also because rates are moving up and down every hour of every day, more or less. The moment that something goes down, you want to be able to hopefully have a contract in place to lock your rate or be able to quickly decide that you like a particular house and get a contract on it. There's things, that Matt can remind us of when it comes to locking rates and where you need to be in the process so that you can see it or so that you can be ready when those things happen, if it just happens to time out that way. And then, of course, there's always rate buydowns, which I'm seeing all the time, every day, in a huge percentage of transactions.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this as far as the time in the market. A few weeks ago, I reached out to one of my clients that I closed several years ago when times were ugly. Um, they bought a house, as far as I know, they love the house. And we spoke about, hey, I think it might be time to go ahead and pull the trigger on a refinance here. And she wanted to think it over, as some people tend to. Um, the savings was going to be probably about 1.5% in this particular situation, but I think that a lot of people have it in their head that that's going to change their payment more than it does in reality. And what happened is we kind of lost contact. I followed up several times, and I kid you not, yesterday I get a notification that that person started their refinance application, and I'm like, hey, you only waited 3 weeks and basically the entirety in savings that we were going to get you to decide to start. So you're exactly right. I think that you do need to start as soon as the inkling hits your eye. I can't say how many people I talk to that are like, man, I don't want to waste your time. I don't know if I want to buy a house or not. And I'm like, well, how do you know if you do or don't if you don't run the numbers?
Yeah,
You know?
because what I see is people are not as close in their mind to what their payment would be or could be. They don't know about rate buy downs. They don't understand them, temporary ones, permanent ones. There's just choices. And unfortunately, as we've talked about, because I had this happen again the other day, you have people listening to their kids or grandkids or cousins or whatever, and they make bad choices because of that. So again, people, just reach out to those of us who do this day in, day out, full time, because we can definitely guide you, lead you. As Matt and I hopefully have proven and continue to prove, we're not here to just get transactions done. We're here to help you make the best choices, hence smart moves. So with all that said, we are in spring season, which brings out the most buyers and the most transactions. And so far, I see that being the case. For my listings, showings are up greatly compared to the last 6 months. Contracts are getting done. Buyers are out looking. I've shown properties in Gallatin and Antioch and Centerville and Waverly and all over Middle Tennessee. So I've got clients coming in from Chicago that are going to be looking in 4 or 5 completely different cities and counties coming up. I personally don't really see a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. Spring just brings the people out.
Yeah, for sure. I think that we're back into a seasonal market. It's something that last year I heard Brian Buffini kind of predict. For those that don't know, he's a real estate coach out in the world with a cool Irish accent. So go listen to him if you're into that sort of thing. But he brought up, like, I think that we're going to see a return to a seasonal market like it used to be before COVID, where the spring and summer was a lot hotter, literally and figuratively, than the rest of the year. And I think, so far that trend actually got started a little early because I feel like at the beginning of February is really when everything's kicked off. And had we not got iced up in January, it probably would have been even sooner. I think ultimately we're Americans. Americans are not patient people. And as a result of that, I think people have also realized that several things. First off, talked to a family yesterday, just like mine, that needed to buy a house because they're out of space because they got more kids than they started in their house with. Well, at a certain point, interest rates don't matter. It's like, do you have the bedrooms or do you not have the bedrooms? Do you got the square footage or do you not? And yes, you can live frugally and you can live with your kids sharing bedrooms and all that stuff. But if you've got the ability to support it, you probably have a better quality of life if everybody's got their own space, right? Especially when they get to the age to argue about everything. Um, but anyway, um, that's the thing, is that it's more than just the pricing that matters here. You've got other reasons that people might move. Now, is this going to impact refinance business? Probably. I was sitting here chomping at the bits because compared to whenever I bought my house for a second there, the market was good enough that I was like, hey, just a little further, I might refinance my house I literally just bought 6 months ago. And that got taken away, and that's fine. It did for plenty of other people too. But it just comes to show, like, it's all fleeting. It doesn't, if you looked at the bond charts that I look at every day, a 3-year-old could draw a straighter line than that. I mean, that's all I got to say. It is squiggly as all get. It looks like a darn EKG. Um, so, and it probably makes my heart look like that as it goes up and down every day, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I watched a sermon, and the pastor actually put up a chart of an EKG and said, "This is basically life." So it's also basically
Yeah,
mortgage rates at this point in time, because
pretty
everything is
much.
up and down and up and down. So I think the moral of the story is, no matter what's going on around us, life continues to go on. People still have needs, people still have wants, people still need to move. We're seeing with, certain states that are driving people to other states. Relocation is still a hot thing here. I mean, the majority of my clients are relocation people from out of state. A few of them are local relocation people from one part of Middle Tennessee to another. But I mean, I definitely still continue to see huge numbers of people moving here from out of state. So, I mean, overall, it's something that we have to keep an eye on. The Iran war and all the things around it are going to continue to impact things, maybe offset like the jobs report and other things moving forward. We have to see how long it lasts. We have to see how much it costs. I mean, there's so many unknowns out there, but that's why we're here, to keep up with all that for you guys, so that we can help you, buy, sell, do whatever it is that you're looking to do, and, help you make the best decision for you. Just know that there are options out there that often get lost in the headlines, that a lot of people don't talk about. So that's, again, why we're here to help you. So, do you have anything else to add to current circumstances?
I think that about does it. I mean, I will say this, compared to the most recent valley in the market, which would have been back around April of 2024, like that was the last low. Um, Even though things have gotten bad in the last 2 weeks, we're still better by about 1.5% on total interest rate than we were back then. And that's not even the worst rates that we've seen in the last 4 years. So, okay. So what? Who cares? Would it be cool to get cheaper? Yeah, everybody would like it to be a little bit cheaper. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the right house is on the market and you know that you can technically afford that payment. It's not going to crush you or your family. Go ahead and do it, because the right house may not be on the market whenever you're waiting for the perfect interest rate to pop up.
That's for sure. Uh, I mean, houses are typically sitting on the market longer now than they have in quite a while, but at the same time, as spring, once the ice storm melted, everything started moving like literally 2 days later. I mean, it was crazy. Um, Something about being pent up in the wintertime, people realize they don't really love where they're at right now. I can't explain it. It's my only explanation for it. So anyway, yep. So stick with us. Reach out to us. Again, I'm Ann Riley Caldwell, not your ordinary agent, here with Matt Wilson, New American Funding, and we're always here to help you make smart and strategic moves when it comes to real estate and financing in Middle Tennessee. And sometimes we give you life advice, but we didn't really fit that in this week. But anyway, check back with us, because at times we will. All right, thanks again for watching, and check out our other episodes.